that target the minority-owned businesses. That would include women-owned businesses. And I met with every time I go home, I meet with those businesses who benefited from the PPP program. And one of the really interesting things is last time when I was talking with two women-owned businesses was that they both started their businesses during the pandemic. They decided that they would start their small businesses. So it was a really interesting kind of a timing that I hadn't heard that people would actually start business during the pandemic when businesses were having such a hard time. So I think that they would definitely have benefited from some of the smaller programs that we have. So for example, the Community Advantage Loan Program, about $104 billion was lent through that program nationwide, and we didn't have any of that going to any businesses in Hawaii. However, the microloan program with $63 billion lent out, that there was at least one entity, nonprofit entity in Hawaii that lent something in the order of close to $500,000 in very small loans. So the idea of increasing the money available for these kinds of really small programs, is that in the cards? I should ask you, Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Definitely a good question there. I certainly think it's important to note that it's always a couple things. I call it trust, and then also access to capital. Mm-hmm. And those are very, very critical when we're talking particularly small loans. I would say certainly the trust factor is so critical because, again, I'm a person, I have no idea, I have nowhere to turn, I don't know how to get started. How can we help them really kind of bridge that gap in terms of moving forward? So we have to continue to work on that piece, and I think we all as microlenders are really working hard to how do we figure out a way to use trust to build those connections, to get folks much more involved and focused in regards to that. But certainly, I would go right back to, as you would say, Senator, and say, I think it is important. We need to continue to increase the funding available, the capital available to, it could be microloan intermediaries, but also other partners as well, because again, there's no way with 150 microloan intermediaries, we can loan all the funds that are needed out there in regards to the communities at large. So it's still critical. So I would say, yes, we need to increase capital, and we certainly need to use things like trust and other resources to build that out.
So while there's approximately $100 billion in fraud under the PPP program, do you know if there was this kind of a percentage, kind of a fraud in these smaller microloan programs?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, Senator.
Anybody?
No.
Ms. Murphy?
I don't know the answer to the microloan question. However, what I can say is that the guardrails we already have in the 7A loan program, mm-hmm. they really prevent a lot of fraud. It's never going to be 100% perfect, mm-hmm. and I can't tell you what the percentage would be, but we verify the tax returns with the IRS mm-hmm. that we receive from the borrower, and right there, that stops quite a few people when they find out we're verifying with the IRS themselves.
Are there those kinds of guardrails in the microloan program and the Community Advantage loan programs?
Yeah, yes, definitely, certainly, okay. Senator. Yeah, there are definitely reviews of those.
To me, as I focus on the targeted, these kinds of targeted loans, that these programs can use a lot more funding if we already have these guardrails, so we're not going to see the kind of massive fraud that we saw in PPP. And it's astounding to me that the kind of fraud in PPP totals $100 billion when you have these other small programs that don't total much more than what was fraudulently acquired under PPP. So it seems to me that we can do more.
So Senator, if I can add, as both a micro lender like John, and he's also a community advantage lender like ourselves. SBA is our regulator, and we've heard some negativity a bit about SBA, but they are a regulator, and they are looking at the loans because a lot of them are going through the loan processing center. Not on the SBA microloan, but for us, every year or every other year, SBA staff does come out and look at our portfolio. So there is some strong oversight. And then in regards to the funding, we think that if Senator Cardin's bill as proposed would really help, and we really like to talk about this continuum of capital from SBA microlenders to community advantage lenders, and then on traditional financial lenders. So I think that's what this bill could do, and some of the reforms that John talked about, and the permanency of community advantage, I think would strengthen this ecosystem of support for small businesses.
So I think that makes a lot of sense, and at the same time, if I can complete my thoughts here. Regarding the microloan program, I did have a nonprofit entity in Hawaii that found this program to be generally very, while challenging, it was very useful, but the one concern they had was the complexity of the reporting requirements from SBA. So when you're dealing with these really small kinds of loans, we can probably make the reporting requirements and maybe other kind of requirements while still maintaining the guardrails much more user-friendly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Marshall.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Murphy, your business model was built upon trying to get to yes for your